Well, welcome back, everybody, to a slightly less foggy Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, although it is a little more damp than when we last spoke to you. The rain did pick up for a little bit. It is easing off once again, but what it did was help to drive that fog down just a little bit, and we have had some on-track action in some other series, but we are now getting ready to go for the fourth round of the Pirelli World Challenge GT and GTA Championship in the traditional sprint format, and that is just about set to take to the grid for the 50-minute race. You see the pace car making the move now into pit lane, and will be leading the field around as we get ready to go here at the Pirelli World Challenge Grand Prix of Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, all part of the Victoria Day Speed Fest weekend. And it's always just a treat to come up here. Even with this weather, this place is special. There's simply no other way to put it. And as we watch these cars make their way out on track, obviously, Cal, the field a little bit light in number, but incredibly deep in terms of talent from the drivers through the teams. This is some special stuff.
It really is going to be an intense race because these conditions have been evolving all day long. We've had a lot of fog here today, hence the delay, of course. We had a wet weather qualifying session here this morning. A huge delta in the lap times between the top three on the grid and the rest of the pack. So we'll have to see if that continues or whether some of those teams towards the back of the field have been able to work on their setups. But again, it's a gamble, Greg, because right now there's been a rain sort of funnel that has come through here. It's cleared out. We're going to have a wet start, as you can see, looking at the track conditions currently, but there's a good chance that this racetrack could dry out, at least get a dry line towards the end. You've then got to factor in your fast lap today as your grid position for tomorrow, so there's a lot of strategy going on right now in the engineers' heads.
And our Pirelli storylines, the first was the weather, which we just talked about. The second one, take a look at that front row. Maybe a little tough to see right here, but the Canadian connection, it's fierce here.
It's immense. You got Daniel Morad, second pole position in a row with the CRP Mercedes AMG machine there, sitting on the left of the screen as we look at it, the bright orange machine. And Scott Hargrove, the championship leader, running with the FAF Motorsports group, had a tremendous season. Started the year with a sweep in both rounds of the sprint races at St. Petersburg. Followed that with a solid run at Long Beach. He has the championship lead right now, and there's an immense battle between those two young Canadians for the fans' attention up here, sponsorship dollars, and everything else. So this should be a great battle here today.
All right, and we're seeing the signal down there that we're getting close to that special command. With that, we'd like to welcome a new member to our broadcast team, Pilar Lastra. Welcome, Pilar.
All right, guys, it is about that time to hear the most famous words in motorsports. Helping us out with that command today is Cole Woodward.
Drivers, start your engines!
Now that is how you do that. That was fantastic. Well done, young man. And this field coming to life, and we are getting ready to go for this fourth round of the championship. And wow, that was wonderful. Absolute joy. And we're looking forward to that. Now, let's get to the third of our Pirelli storylines, and it's the GTA intensity, Cal. This points battle is really, really, deep.
It's really been a great battle all season long. Martin Fuentes leads right now over Yuki Hirata, who's having a brilliant season, making the move up from the GT Cup Championship last year to GT3 machinery with his Lamborghini, and Rodrigo Baptista, maybe one of the most promising young prospects that we have in our paddock right now, sits there in the third position with the Capex Racing Bentley machine. But it's none of those three guys who grabbed the pole position. It's Parker Chase, unbelievably, his very first Pirelli World Challenge pole, admittedly in the AM division. He'll line up fourth here today. It was a great run here this morning.
Yeah, everybody was surprised. You look at who he out-qualified. Daniel Mancinelli, in many ways a Ferrari legend. Tony Vielander, two-time Le Mans winner. Just a great effort by Parker Chase. The margin between the top two, you talked about it, Cal, in the overall order, only a couple of tenths, and Michael Christensen was right there as well. Then a fairly big gap back to the rest of the field, and there were a variety of reasons for that. Some of it was just caution. For others, it was setup issues.
Yeah, I ran over and saw the Capex boys a short while ago and just said, what happened in qualifying? And it's their first wet run with the Bentley, and they said, we knew that the Bentley is going to struggle a little bit in the wet, but we didn't really identify how big it was. And it's a massive setup change that they need to do. Basically, putting the power down with all of the weight with that front engine car is really a tricky issue for the drivers. They are experiencing wheel spin up the Andretti straightaway in fourth gear. And and just really had to be light-footed on that throttle and losing a lot of time. So I think their game plan is, Greg, looking at where the cars qualify, there you see the bright yellow machine, the number 9 of Alvaro Pareto, 2016 champion, is to really focus on tomorrow. Yeah. They realize in the wet conditions they're going to be compromised in their pace anyway. I think they've gone more with a dry setup, hoping that this racetrack dries. Maybe we're going to see potential for pit stops where guys changing the slick tires. And then again, your fast lap today sets grid for tomorrow. I think they're focused on tomorrow because that car was really quick in the dry this weekend.
So might we actually see drivers be willing to give up a position to get clear track to really get a lap in?
I think you could certainly see that. If you're running towards the back end of this field here today and maybe, okay, if I make a pit stop, say there's 5 laps to go and the track is dry, no one wants to come into pit lane. It'll cost you probably 15 seconds to change the tires, 25-second pit lane delta. That's a huge amount of time to give up for maybe 4 laps to get out there with dry tires where you're quicker. But if that's going to give you a pole position for tomorrow, you would give up that position today, maybe lose a couple of spots in today's race to be on the front of the grid tomorrow and get that bonus point.
It's a good point. Point swing from, say, 8th to 10th is not going to be that big of a deal, and starting up front would be a huge deal. Well, we're also going to have a second formation lap here just because of these conditions. They qualified in the wet, but that was much earlier this morning. This is a very different track condition, having had cars out recently. So as you can see, everybody trying to figure out, okay, where is the grip in these damp conditions right now? It's going to be tricky.
It is, and what we saw this morning, particularly for Morad, who grabbed that pole position, an excellent lap, he was running what we call the wet line. You're off the traditional dry racing, the natural line that you'd run around this racetrack. You're just looking for grip. Forget the most efficient way through a corner in terms of the radius. It's all about grip in these conditions. So he was certainly on it. He's a local lad. He knows this track very well, a lot of track knowledge, as does Scott Hargrove, who starts alongside him on the front row. Those guys are running very much a wet racing line. You'll see them run the cushion around the outside of corners, nowhere near an apex at times, but that's the effective way in the wet conditions. Now, there'll be a crossover point where suddenly the normal line will give you grip again, and they'll be crossing back to the normal line. So it'll be fascinating to watch this play out.
And interestingly, on Murad's pole lap, he ran wide in turn 3, and it was a sketchy moment. Kept it pinned, straightened it up, and went and ended up on pole, which tells you that he had even more potentially that he had there. But as you said, these conditions are going to be changing here. This track, daunting enough in the dry, just under 2.5 miles, 10 turns, and in these changing conditions, it just is going to present one heck of a challenge. That is our Porsche race analysis. And this is just going to be a study in evolution throughout this race. Just how do you react to how this track is evolving and changing?
Yeah, for sure. And if you think that you may be able to stay on the wets the whole way, you've got to think about, not abusing them.
Right.
I mean, you got to look for any wet patches on the racetrack, trying to keep those wet tires cool so they do not overheat. Because if you do that, suddenly you're just like you're on a skating rink. You'll need to make a pit stop.
So the lights go out on the safety car, so we are going green this time. Full 50 minutes of racing about to unfold here. And I'll tell you, Cal, I don't really see any wet on that track. It certainly still is damp, no question about that. Offline, maybe a little bit. If they're on rains, I don't know how long they are going to last here. As I said, we've had cars out and racing as this rain has abated just a little bit. And right now, it looks like it's just going to continue to clear, isn't it?
Yeah, looking at the radar currently, it looks like there's a band of rain has gone through here, and doesn't look like there's any going to hit before the end of this 50-minute race. GT3 machinery, 500-plus horsepower, trying to put that down on this very tricky racetrack is going to be key to victory here this afternoon.
And Daniel Murad in that orange DeVilbiss CRP Mercedes-AMG on pole on the inside. Scott Hargrove in the Toronto-based Pfaff Motorsports Castrol Porsche. He's from British Columbia, but that team based right here. Murad from Toronto. And here we go, getting ready to go as this is round 4 of the championship GT. We are green. It is a drag race down into turn 1. Murad has the inside. I was wondering if Hargrove was just going to try and loop the outside. And look at the run by Daniel Mancinelli. Boy, did he time that to perfection. Went from 6th to 4th.
Yeah, brilliant start from Mancinelli coming off that last sprint race victory at Long Beach. There he is in that bright white Ferrari there. In the top 3 from qualifying, had taken off immediately at the start of this race. See Vilander there in the red Ferrari sitting in the 6th position. Really struggled with that Ferrari in these wet conditions this morning. Spoke to the crew, they just said there was nothing he could do. There was no grip that they could find. And the question is, what sort of setup changes did they put on the Ferrari Motorsports Ferrari for the race here this afternoon?
The thing to me, Cal, as we watch them now for the first time down into Moss Corner at speed, is you expected to see the local guys run well, especially the local guy in a Porsche that has that engine right over the drive wheels and plants incredibly well coming out of Moss and the like. But Murad in the Mercedes, boy, I'll tell you, it was just spectacular watching him run.
Well, I think when you look at a championship season, Greg, we've seen certain cars strong at certain racetracks. You look at the Ferrari, typically that's quick anywhere you go. Same thing for that Mercedes. They seem to be really compliant when you go to a circuit where you got to use the curbs. It's soft enough in the wet conditions. It gives you grip as well, gives you great braking as well. So it seems to be a horse for all courses, and Morad's taking advantage of that with his second consecutive pole position here this morning.
That's a good point. With the homologation and how the cars are set, if your car is basically homologated with a fairly rigid, stiff platform on it, you get in these conditions, it just makes it all the more difficult, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, and I think that's maybe what the Ferrari's up against. They don't really have a lot of setup time on this Pirelli P0 wet specifically, and they just said they were shocked. Vilander just said, I've got no grip out here, was really struggling. And when you see someone like Tony Vilander 7-8 seconds off the pace, you're normally talking about hundreds, and we're talking seconds here in the wet this morning.
Yeah, that spoke volumes, it really did. And look at the run, once again, Yuki Hirata is, front end just gave up a little bit there.
That's a big slide.
Yes, it was. But Yuki right now just doing another exceptional job, just running very close to Parker Chase, just 2 cars back, and with Vilander stuck in the middle there, but sticking with Tony Vilander right now for Yuki, he's a year and a half into driving a race car of any kind.
Yeah, it's super cool to see him. He's such a fun character, really loves his racing. Did some downhill skiing before he got injured, and he said turn 2 and turn 4, he said it's like a downhill ski slalom coming down there, so he was certainly very comfortable there, just letting the car slide.
At this point, we haven't really yet seen anybody start the proverbial looking for some damp spots on the track for the tires. And
well, it seems pretty consistent all the way across in terms of that dampness, Greg. It's not like there's a real dry line yet.
Running best lap so far, a 1:28.7 essentially by Daniel Murad compared to a 1:29.3 for qualifying. So they're already underneath the times that they were able to set in the all-wet qualifying session, if you will. So the track certainly a little bit quicker at this stage. And boy, this is local track knowledge. He very quickly went to this line and made it work. And here's where he ran just a little bit wide. And that looked a little bit more circumspect.
Yeah, and the key is we talk about that wet line essentially means you're running around the outside of some of these corners, and that means if the car slips a little bit, you're already on the outside of the corners. Exactly. You know what I mean? So it's very easy to make a mistake, but the amount of grip that you pick up there is immense. You know, I used to look for, you wanted when you're driving a sedan or a GT car like this, you wanted to hear those marbles kind of hitting the inner fenders. When you're out in the dirt, in the dry, that means you're in trouble. Yep. In the wet, that means you're in the grip.
You got, yeah, exactly. If you see a hot dog wrapper flying somewhere, you're in the right spot. Right. Exactly. Hargrove, boy, now he's moving over there, so it's starting, isn't it?
It's already starting, and Michael Christensen, such an ace in all conditions. They're running there in the Allegra Motorsports Porsche, running in 3rd position. Porsche factory driver will also compete in the World Endurance Championship this year. Will run at Le Mans next month, and started that campaign off very well with the runner-up finish at Spa just a couple of weeks ago. And he's used to running in these conditions throughout Europe, as there you see a lot of puddling. And those puddles that you still see is kind of up against the curbing where there's not a lot of drainage. That's an issue for anyone who's thinking about, not just yet, but towards the latter stages of this race, making that switch over to slick tires. That's then an issue when you come across those problem areas.
Here's a look at the always smiling Daniel Mancinelli and the team TR3 Racing. It's very much the Italian connection, but the interesting thing here, I found out that within Daniel's family, there's very much a Toronto connection. His dad was born in Toronto, so he said this is a very special place for me. Have been here many times as well. And here is Yuki Hirata, and not quite close enough to say he's attacking on Tony Vilander, but he certainly has him in his sights. And boy, what a heady moment for Yuki Hirata here. And for Tony Vilander, you can just imagine the frustration. He is a fiery Finn, and right now, to know that what he's capable of and what that car's capable of in the dry. Now Yuki's attacking.
Yeah, he is. And when you think about, when you say the names Vilander, Harada, Parent. It's pretty cool, and he needs to take a snapshot of this because he's really putting the pressure on the Flying Finn right now.
And as we watch them work their way up the Mario Andretti straightaway, which is really not too straight, and it is climbing and winding, and up to the top of the hill. There's the hump up into turn 8. It's the only thing on this track that's ever been changed. They shaved that just a little bit after back in the day, the super high horsepower cars would get the nose a little bit too high in the air. Otherwise, this, as I said it, when you drive this track, you know that you're driving on the exact same asphalt that, say Jackie Ickx won in the Brabham here in the rain in 1969. You know, some pretty heady stuff. And right there, we just get word, Yuki Hirata is our Optima Batteries Best Start Award winner. So already getting some accolades. Up just
he's wide there.
Wide there.
Yeah, he just got in there, slightly acute angle to the approach to turn 2 and just had to tippy-toe through there. And one of the issues is, even in these wet conditions, the stewards were very much on top of the track limits this morning. Morad had a time disallowed for exceeding those. They've changed it up a little bit. Before, you had to have at least 2 wheels on the track side of that white line that distinguishes the edge of the road. But you can actually be up and on the curb with all 4 wheels now, so it's just not being on the other side of some of the curbing, like on turn 1 would be a good example of that.
And I'll tell you, that paving the outside of turn 2, what Yuki did there in the that would have been a significant off with probably a huge impact. So you understand the wisdom of it, no question about that. It does change the dynamic and look of that corner just a little bit, but nonetheless, it's safe. The margin here, that is from 3rd back to 4th to Daniel Mancinelli, who sits right now 5.5 seconds adrift. Here comes Parker Chase, who continues to lead in the AM category, doing a superb job. And you have to be impressed with what's unfolding for Parker here in the vertical bridge and protein balance, protein water, true speed, Audi. And it's a big step, obviously. Interestingly, talking to Parker, I said, how different is it to drive this car versus the Ginetta you ran in GTS? And he said, ironically, he said the driving style is really the same. You know, and I said, yeah. I said, you were so diabolical on the brakes in the Ginetta. And he said, well, with all the downforce on this car and the ABS, I could be just as late on the brakes. He goes, everything feels really sort of comfortable. He said, the problem is it comes at you way faster. He said, that's the adjustment.
Yeah, and he's adjusting quickly, hence the pole position here this morning. So he's got great tutelage from his Sprint X racing partner, Ryan Dial, who's had success in many different GT molds, and he'll lead him in the right direction. He's on his radio throughout the course of these races, through the practice sessions. We see Harada there still taking a look down at the inside as we go through Moss Corner there. Now up the Andretti straightaway. He's really close. He'll be in the tow here in the draft. Get that aero effect of punching the hole in the air by the Ferrari. Minimizes the drag on the car that's right behind, and he'll be able to close up as they kind of crest that hill. What will Vilander do here in terms of protecting the line?
And Harada content to follow here. I think he could have maybe tried something, but you could see down at the exit of Moss, you can see that Vilander, that Ferrari, there was just no grip. It just would not turn and hook up.
Yeah, and I'd hate to be on the radio with Tony because there's some fiery words coming across the radio channel right now.
Daniel Morad right now has stretched his margin over fellow Canadian Scott Hargrove to over 5 seconds. Morad is putting on an absolute clinic here today. He's got tons of laps around this place, obviously, with all of the racing he's done in championships and GT3 Cup Canada, etc. There he is in that orange De Vilbus Mercedes AMG.
I think the key, though, Greg, is he's got to be careful. He doesn't need to stretch this lead any more than he's got right now. He needs to just manage those tires. Scott Hargrove is a canny young driver. He leads the championship right now. He'll be thinking about the big picture. Listen, if we're not forecast any more rain, this racetrack is going to dry out. 15 minutes on these wet tires is a long way to go, particularly when we start to get that dry line evolving. So Daniel can't afford to just disappear in the distance and suddenly just go off the cliff in terms of the tire degradation with that Mercedes.
Compelling battle between the two Porsches, though, here, Hargrove and Christensen. And as you said, just the experience of Christensen. Hargrove's certainly incredibly fast. He's driven Porsches before, certainly. As a matter of fact, sort of split his time in Porsches when he went and raced some open wheel stuff and was very impressive there as well. But Christensen is an outright global specialist in these cars. and you wonder, is he measuring right now, you think?
Yeah, and again, it could be, you know, like Hargrove's kind of pacing himself to Daniel Moret's lead. He's also pacing himself to the car behind. He wants something at the end of this race. He's in a slightly different position than the other two guys. They're chasing him in the points. He has the championship lead right now, so he's got to be a bit more disciplined to not throw it all away. One of the keys is getting to 50% of these races to score points. So that's one thing on everyone's agenda in these tricky conditions. Don't get too aggressive. Don't take too many risks before you know you're going to get points on the board today. Then at the halfway point, you start to push a little bit more and go from there. But one of the things we noted in qualifying this morning, there was such a huge delta between the top three and the rest. I spoke to Michael Christensen, so we mentioned it in the qualifying show this morning that we were doing for the track, Greg, is that you got to get these tires into the temperature sweet spot as well. Even though they're wet weather tires, it's just like going out on a cold slick.
Right.
You got to get them warm enough. If you don't drive the car hard enough and load the tire enough, you can't get them into their sweet spot. And Michael said I had to really use the brakes hard, be overly aggressive to get into that sweet spot. Then the grip came to me. He said, I recognized that when I got out of the car after qualifying and saw that huge delta. He said, I just laughed because I knew what everyone else was struggling with. If they weren't able to get their car to that point, then they couldn't get the grip out of the tires.
Well, one of the challenges for these GT3 cars, because they're so aero-dependent, the way they're designed up, is mechanical grip isn't quite like it would be in other forms of GT racing and sedan racing. And so you have to get into the aero to really get aggressive on the tires and get everything. And when it's wet, sometimes it's tough to get fast enough to get into that aero.
Yeah, and I think to Michael's point, he was using the brakes. We see it on the pace laps where you see the drivers on the brakes all the time. What they're doing there is trying to generate tremendous brake temperature that then goes through the rotors, through the pads, up through the calipers, up through the uprights, to the wheel, and then it heats up the air inside the wheel and heats the tire. You know what I mean? So there's a real process in doing that and using every trick of the trade to just try and get the tires up to 10.
Last lap, Scott Hargrove set fastest sector time in the race in that final sector. He is definitely pushing it. I've noticed here that Murad's times have dropped off just a little bit, and either he's just saying, okay, I've got up to, I've got a 5-second margin, I'm going to manage that, or are we starting to see those tires overheat just a little bit? Still don't see a lot of people aggressively looking for puddles in water. I've seen it on occasion.
But I think what's happening is the track is drying out a little bit. And with these front three cars, I think their cars were set up perfectly for the wet. And some of the other cars, we're now looking at Mancinelli, for example. His fast lap is only 2/10 off the other guy's last lap. Do you know what I mean? So he's starting to get in his sweet spot a little bit. Parker Chase set his fastest lap on the last lap through at 1:28.7. So the rest of the pack is starting to find pace, whereas the top three seem to have plateaued a little bit.
And as I say that, Murad, whose fast lap was a 27.70, turns a 27.77. So he's still running awfully quickly right now. And as we're watching Yuki Hirata put on another very impressive performance, let's check in with Pilar down in Yuki's pit.
Yeah, so I'm here with Fabio Tuzzi, team manager. Fabio, you guys look like really strong contenders this weekend. What did you guys do to prepare for the race?
Well, actually, we didn't have that much time to set up the car for the rain. We got surprised, and we went to qualifying with a setup that we think it might work, and obviously it worked, and now it's still working good. So we are in the race, so we are doing a really good performance. So hopefully, we're gonna go again, and to the end of the race, and hopefully get a good result. So. It's the first time we're gonna race on the rain, and hopefully we're gonna end it up good, in a good position, even for the championship.
Well, best of luck. We're really rooting for you guys.
Thank you.
Well, and he mentions a good point about that championship. I mean, Yuki right now sits 8 points behind Martin Fuentes in the GTA Driver Championship in the sprint format, and right now he's got Baptista and Chase behind him. And with the run he's putting on right now, he is going to close up as Martin Fuentes right now sits back in the, what do we have, Matt? The third spot in the AM category. So this is good news for you.
It is, and it's all about big picture. It's very early in the championship season to be thinking that way, but as tight as these guys have been fighting all season long, you got to be thinking ahead of the game in terms of, where is your main competitor in the championship? What is he doing? talking to the K-Pax team, they were very much focused on Baptista getting that 50% mark before they got aggressive. They knew it was going to be a struggle here in the wet with the Bentleys. Certainly has proven to be the case, but they're going to really focus on getting to the 50% mark before they take any risk whatsoever.
It's an interesting thing with the Bentleys, isn't it? Is when you get to a track where they are good, they're spectacularly good. But when you get to a track where they're not really going to be great on that track, they can struggle a little bit. And in this case, obviously doing so in wet conditions, which makes a difference. Great story, though, coming from Bentley and that K-Pax team. After all the damage that Alvaro's car endured at VIR, Bentley stepped up, helped them find a chassis from the Malaysian team, Absolute Racing, that runs in the Asian Championship, helped it get here so that they can even be here this weekend.
It's just an incredible testament to the dedication and the support that they have from Jim Huey and the whole K-Pax organization. The guys were able to get a car here. It arrived in Atlanta last Friday, I believe. They took it to VIR where they've been collecting the cars after the last round of the championship, rather than heading back to their base on the West Coast. And just a big effort by that group. What did they do? They went out in the first practice, or immediately towards the top of the time sheets yesterday in the afternoon session. Perrent was quickest. This is a racetrack they really felt they would be strong at, with a high-speed sweeper nature of these corners and the power of that Bentley. They thought they'd be in great shape, but then they get the rain. Throws them another curveball they didn't really need.
Yeah, this track, I mean, when they talk about what the strong suits of the Bentley is, I mean, this track might just define it, where it's high speed, long transitions and the like, where they can really get into the aero and use the power of that of the V8 in that Bentley. And but damp, just not really what they were looking for here. Daniel Morad continues to be impressive here. He's just continuing to throw down laps in the low 27s. He gets any lower in the 27s, he's going to be in the 26s here soon. And that margin now moved up to almost 7 seconds over Hargrove, who has an angry-looking Michael Christensen in his mirror.
Seconds, that's what we call the crossover point, where you could consider going to slick tires and being as effective. So, again, there's a long way to go in this race, and the fact that they're getting down towards that. Right now, they're about 13 seconds outside of the dry lap times. That means that everyone's on high alert in terms of just looking for anyone to make that move. But, again, I think everyone's going to get to 50% to score points before they risk going out on this racetrack on slick tires. It's still wet weather tires right now, as you can see.
Right, and you're not seeing a real dry line yet, but you're seeing a line that has a significant less amount of damp to it relative to the other spots. So, as you said, they got to be thinking about it. I think 50% is key. And then you always wait for that one penguin that you push into the shark waters to see.
Coming down pit lane is about 25 seconds. The pit lane delta will take you probably 15 seconds. You're allowed, it's not like the Sprint X competition where you're limited on wheel guns and stuff. If the teams are equipped, you can basically have 4 men working on the car, as many guns as you want. So you could probably get that tire change done if you're set up for it and practiced and rehearsed, maybe in 12 to 15 seconds. So you're looking at losing about 40 seconds by switching over to slick tires. Then you got to get those tires up to temp quickly, which is not easy. The other problem is not just dry or wet. The ambient temperature's down as well today, so it's going to take a while to get the temperature in the slicks.
You would think the first person to try that probably would come from deeper in the pack, yeah.
Yeah, you would think so. Maybe a Perrent or someone like that. He's running in 8th and not a lot to lose in terms of the championship right now. They're in a big hole after all of the incidents earlier in the season. So he would be a man who would maybe go out there just trying to gradually generate some tire temp, and then really focus on laying down a flyer there in the last couple of minutes of the race to secure a good grid spot for tomorrow.
Boy, this is starting to become a tasty little battle here. And it's interesting watching the two different lines these guys are driving. Particularly different lines in various spots around the track. Watch this here now. Yeah,
and I think when you talk about, knowing the track like Hargrove does, I spoke to him this weekend. He believes he's won 14 of the 18 races he's competed in here over the years in single-seater competition as well as GT Cup cars. So he knows the racetrack like the back of his hand, and he's just comfortable running that in that. When you think about running down through turn 4, it's a daunting corner. Then to put it right on that white line on the right-hand side of the road, that's a big gamble, and it's hard to get that comfort factor at speed, even for someone like Christensen.
Boy, Christensen got a nice run there, so he's starting to explore. It looks a little bit, talking to the FAF team, Hargrove ran with them and won the Porsche GT3 Cup Canada last year, and I was talking to the team, and they said, yeah, we used to race, he used to race against us in that championship. And
right.
I said, how'd that work for you? And they said, Well, we got real tired of him beating us, and so we literally went to him and said, look, if you ever find yourself in need of a ride, please contact us.
Yeah.
And when the open wheel stuff started to get a little tough, he gave him a call, and they said, hey, we could make something happen. And he said they did a handshake deal to run the GT3 Cup Canada last year with the knowledge and promise they would run World Challenge GT this year on the Pirelli tires. And, boy, it's been successful. Boy, he gets close to the end.
Yeah, really close. And I think, ironically, he ran with the Allegra, didn't he, against Faf. The guys are right behind him, so he made the switch over. But right now, this is getting towards that time. Morad's into the 26 range, so that's definitely down towards that window as Christensen looks to the inside. Hargrove swinging wide, searching for grip.
And that little bit of a slide cost him just a little bit, Christensen, so he's dropped a couple of lengths back again. Let's quickly sneak down to pit lane with Pilar with Hargrove's team manager.
Hi, guys. Yes, I'm here with Steve Bortolatti, and you guys are in a fierce fight, and I'm seeing tires coming out.
Yeah.
What's going on in your head right now?
A lot of decisions to be made in the next little bit. We're local, so we know the weather around this place. It changes very fast. It's windy right now, which usually means it's going to dry fast. So if there's enough time in the race, maybe we'll pit for slicks. Otherwise, we're going to have to keep fighting off the 24 car at Christensen.
All right. Best of luck to you guys. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, that's the dice roll, isn't it? Is, you know, when you do it, you got to be prepared for it. But at what point do you pull the trigger and say, let's do this here? It's going to be very interesting. And just one last thing on FAF, you know, it's a local Porsche dealership and organization here. And since 2011, I was talking with Steve, and he said about 80% of the employees of the team members are FAF employees. He said it's a passion all the way through that organization.
Well, FAF are not only the biggest Porsche dealer in Canada, they're the biggest Porsche dealer in North America.
It's fierce.
You know,
yeah.
And they're the biggest McLaren dealer worldwide. They've got 3 McLaren dealerships up here. So they're a big player, 2,000 employees, I believe, and they got a big audience here with support this weekend. As you see, Vilander now, man on the move. And this is the guy that they're really keen on. Talking to Steve Bortolotti there, Pilar down in pit lane. This is the guy they got to think about. Vilander is second in the championship. They're thinking, what will he be doing? Can he take advantage if we gamble and go out on slicks? Will he stay out and maybe still beat us and gain points on us here today? They've got to be factoring that in.
And his pace is starting to get there, which probably means that he's starting to get some real heat in those tires, and he might, for the first time, be starting to feel some significant grip. He has run down and caught Parker Chase. Meanwhile, on the other side, up Murad now is down into the 25s, Cal, and so this track is definitely drying out just a little bit. And Vilander and Chase, Harada had been all over Vilander, and they have dropped him big time.
Well, I know that Harada was really struggling with the balance of the race car in the dry, and Vilander was really struggling with the balance of the car in the wet. So we're definitely getting to that crossover period. If you just focus on those two competitors who were close together, and now you're not going to even see Harada in the background as Vilander heads down through turn 1, putting the pressure on Parker. At
R Ferry Motorsports, that is a Toronto-based program and team. Vilander to the inside, tough place to do it here. But Parker, boy, there's the rim shot, but it gave him a lot better exit speed out of turn 2 and heading up into turn 3.
Well, we're definitely at the crossover period in terms of the wet line versus the dry line. So we can see it now pretty equal. Vilander's more on the dry line versus Parker's wet line, running the rim shot around the racetrack. The key is how quickly does it now dry out enough to make that move to slick tires. And again, the ambient temperature will factor that in as well, Greg. It's going to be really treacherous on those opening lap. We're still a relatively damp racetrack and no real ambient temperature, track temperature to get heat into those tires.
That time, just watching the last couple of times, Vilander, that car looking a lot more pointy now as he turns and starts to pick throttle up. So it's definitely coming to him a little bit. He is close this time to Parker Chase. This battle for 5th overall. Parker still leading in the AM category. Vilander looks to the inside into 8. And I think smart move there by Parker. Yeah, you like to finish as high in the overall as you can, but he's still leading his class. Don't do anything that might end up having an off.
Yeah, for sure. And he knew once he got down to the inside, he had to really give him room, because once Vilander's committed there, if he suddenly got a big understeer, a big push, he's going to come up into your radius there. So watch this. Parker knows he's made to move the inside, and he just has to give it up. So you're not like overlap there. If Vilander was to lose the front end and come across your bow, you need to have the gap there and give it to him.
Anytime it's damp, let alone wet, you always want to open up the margins that you're racing with each other, I would think, because of exactly that.
Yeah, because even if someone has no intention of getting into you, a little slip and suddenly a little bump, if you're on the outside, you're going to go for a ride. And that's all part of the racecraft that Parker Chase is learning and doing such a great job with.
Vilander quickly starts to stretch that margin a little bit. For Parker, I was going to say an opportunity to follow one of the best in the world. But Vilander now, that car really looks like it's come good in these drying conditions, and he's making good his escape just a little bit. So Vilander now moves up. Chase will give you a gap back from Chase to Harada at this stage. Then Fuentes and Baptista sit in the 9th and 10th position overall, and they are split, Harada and Fuentes, right now by Parent. And waiting to see him start to really find some time.
Well, he is. He's just starting to fire some lap time, not lap time, but sector times. And Parent was fastest in sector 1, so that Bentley's coming alive a little bit as well. So we're now at past the halfway point, so everyone will score points here today. So now it's game on. Who's going to be the first to blink and think about making that move to slick tires and start to really factor onto that fast lap of the race to gain pole position for tomorrow?
And it's interesting, too, isn't it? Once you hit 50%, you know, one of the bonuses of a slightly smaller field size is if, as we're watching Mancinelli now, is run down and caught Christensen at this stage. A slightly smaller field size gives you more options, because if you do slide back a little bit, it's not going to be like going back to 30th or anything and be completely out of the points. And, boy, I think you nailed it, Cal. They hit the 50% mark of this one, and Mancinelli just dropped the hammer.
He's dropping the hammer, and the racetrack is coming to him. It's coming to the Ferrari. It's coming to everyone else other than that top three who had such a distinct advantage in the wet. And again, it was such a gamble with the weather conditions changing so rapidly in terms of what you would start this race on in terms of your major setup. And I know that Christensen had softened that Allegra Motorsports Porsche off for the wet conditions, and now it's starting to backfire on him a little bit. He dives to the inside to protect. Mancinelli's all over him, looking for grip.
Oh, that was
hard racing there.
That was good hard racing. It was a late adjustment by Christensen, is what we'll call it here. I was just watching that Parent had just had the fastest sector time of anybody and was the first guy to get into the 157-mile-an-hour speed in the traps. So Parent, as you said, is definitely starting to find pace.
Yeah, but look at Morad. He just laid down a 25-2, which is a second clear of even Vilander, who's flying right now in the Ferrari. That lap was 2 seconds clear almost, as we see this battle for third intensifying down through turn 3, the charge to turn 4. Mancinelli with that Ferrari has got grip.
Yeah, he turned in trying to get underneath Christensen, and that Ferrari started to do the dance, and he just stayed with it, but it just cost him enough. But yeah, he is in full attack mode right now, and Christensen is watching Hargrove just ease away.
Yeah, and for Morad, I think what he's doing, he's burning those wet tires down now. He's trying to create as big a gap as he can. I think he's already committed to maybe making a pit stop and switching to slicks. He's thinking, I don't have to save these wets potentially. Just go for it, build as big a gap as I can. As you see Hargrove there searching for the water up the end ready straightaway, just trying to cool down those Pirelli P0 wet tires.
We are starting to see the much lighter patches on the track indicating dry. And that is when generally you'll start to see the tires really struggle here. Mancinelli trying to rotate the TR3 Italian Shoemaker Ferrari once again to get the drive off the corner. The car dancing, dives to the inside one, just at least trying to show the nose, maybe get Christensen off rhythm. But the problem is, when he went down to the inside there, that's where it's still a little bit damp and it cost him.
It did. Yeah, it's a real game of chess right now in terms of thinking about the next move. You make a move, where does that put you in terms of track placement, in terms of the line and the grip level as you exit a corner? And one thing that these teams have got to factor in, if they are thinking solely about fast lap for tomorrow, you've got to give these drivers enough time to get acclimated to the slick tires, get some temperature to be able to lay down a fast time. So I wouldn't want to think you'd want to go past maybe the 10 minutes to go mark to be able to get tires on and actually produce an effective lap time to warrant that change.
Well, I'll tell you, if we could see through that darkish window on that TR3 Ferrari, I think we would see Daniel Mancinelli's hands on that wheel very busy, as he has got that thing dancing. And here you go, Cal.
Yeah, this is the call that we expected. You got to think that the K-Pax boys, they're focused on tomorrow. They know they have a fast car in dry conditions. but it's tough to pass here. They have to be at the front of this pack. They're making that move. He's going to have to tread so lightly here. They've had 3 major shunts with the Alvaro already this season. They've got to just get out there and just give him time. That's why they're pitting so early compared to everyone else. Give him enough time to gradually build that tire temperature. We see Mancinelli now through the final corner trying to get the power down as they head down towards turn 1.
He is doing everything he possibly can. Again, looks to the inside here, but that outside, ooh, that was close.
That's the problem.
Yep.
You commit and suddenly the front end doesn't pick up the grip and you're just along for the ride, and if the guy beside you is too close, that's what we talked about with Parker chasing Vilander in turn 8, is that Parker gave him the room in case that happened.
Mancinelli looking in, looking out. Tough to make a move. I've seen it. Very brave humans trying an outside pass through 3 here. He's thinking about it. Couldn't execute it quite there.
There, Perrin. Tough job for Perrin now on those slick tires to get out of the way. Typically, get out of the way means you're really on the wet, and on those slick tires, he's going to have 0 grip right now. So we'll start to look at his sectors there and see when those tires start to come into their sweet spot. And this is great news for guys like Morad and Hargrove. They can look at what Perrin is doing, looking at his fastest lap so far. What will he then do? His fast lap today is a 1:27.1. As soon as he starts to beat those times on the slick tires, then he'll start to go. The other people, the dominoes will start to fall.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Suddenly it looked to me like Mancinelli just completely threw out an anchor there for just a moment, and he lost a ton. Maybe it was just the camera angle or the like, but he just suddenly slowed way down. Maybe he spun up the tires.
I'm curious that Morad got down to the 25.2s, and now he's backing up to the 26s. Hargrove back to the 20s. That crossover period of slick tires is happening.
Mancinelli way wide. He is pushing so hard. And you would think at this stage, if you're on that dry line and you're on those wets, those tires are going to start to chunk, and you end up then it's almost like you're driving in the rain again. There's just no grip at all.
Oh, it's incredible. It's like you're literally on ice, and just the tire is no longer compatible with the trying to heat the heat that you're generating by pushing them so hard.
Out of the legendary Moss corner. Originally designed in the early days as a hairpin, and Sterling Moss came in and won the first race here and said, may I make a suggestion? And suggested that instead of with a hairpin, they make it a multiple apex corner with some different angles to it. And you listen to Sterling Moss when he says something like that. Changed it up, and it became Moss corner at that point. Now,
sector times as the other guys right now. In sector 1, he was 5 seconds off. In sector 2, within a tenth or two, so that's not too bad. We'll see what he can do through sector 3, the final sector of the lap. And everyone's eyeballs up and down pit lane will be looking at Alvaro Perrin's sector times, his lap times, to see when it is good. And he's going to give them the indicator when it's good and safe to make that move to slick tires. He's then going to have the advantage because he's then got the temperature into his tires earlier than everyone else who makes a late move. Christensen, little slip there. Mancinelli looking for a way by. And all of this time, they're gradually eating into the gap of Hargrove, our championship leader.
Look at this battle here as Martin Fuentes gets around Yuki Hirata. That is a battle in the AM category. Martin, the points leader in that Hublot Alpha Prime Squadra Corsa Garage Italia Ferrari. And that car is,
that was arms and elbows inside of that cockpit. Martin really busy there as he just overcommitted to turn 1. Car got a little bit loose on him, had to try and grab it. But as you said, Greg, this is the championship leaders right here. First and second, Martin Fuentes has the lead. And what he wants to focus on for the rest of the year is beating that Lamborghini of Yuki Hirata.
And here it is, the second guy, and it is Baptista coming off of an overall win at VIR.
You can see lots of good guys working on that car, different to the Sprint X rules. These guys have a lot of sports car experience in other championships where 4 tire changes are normal, and there you see the heat coming off those tires. They've been scorched.
That gives you an idea. And the interesting thing here is you're not racing at speed and loading the car and having cars running through pit lane, so pit lane can be very damp, and it is so easy to spin them up and then have yourself hit one of these walls that define the exit. So very, very tender as you exit pit lane here.
Yeah, no, that's the real key is coming out of the pits, because the tyres are stone cold, and that's probably the wettest part of the race. There you see Yuki, but when you think about a downhill skier, Greg, just sliding over the ice, this is very similar to what you're experiencing driving the car right now. So Yuki probably feels very comfortable with that sensation.
Well, and take a look at those tires.
Yeah, that's what we talked about, just where the tire just literally rolls up as they overheat and no longer compatible with the grip that you're searching for.
And that grip completely goes away. But Yuki talked about that. He said one of the things, look at this. We'll pass on that for just a moment, as this is getting really interesting. Christensen.
Sorry, Greg.
Yeah, he just...
Fastest first sector. If I was Hargrove, I'd be pitting right now. So it was a tough call to make as a championship leader, but as soon as I see purple for someone on slick tires with the battle coming up behind me, you got to go.
And it was fast by a bunch in that that sector, wasn't it, compared to the others? I mean, he's at least a second or more clear of everybody.
Yeah, fastest trap speed as well. Sector 2 looks strong as well, so those tires are going to start to come into play. 27.1 has been Brent's best. Now he runs a 24. Fastest lap of the day for Alvaro Brent on slick tires. These guys need to make the move. They need to make the move early so they have enough time to get some temp in and lay down those fast laps.
They do, but I'll tell you what, I hate having them pit, because watching these guys throw these GT3 cars sideways.
Well, they all come in together, Greg, and go back out and resume, right?
But I know, I'm just liking this absolute sideways. You don't see this in GT3 cars. This
Look
is
at
ice
Hargrove.
racing.
Look at Hargrove. He's
wide.
Christensen at the inside. Oh, and he still keeps it. Now they're side by side. Remember, they hit each other at Long Beach, where the Porsche factory driver took out the Porsche championship leader in Hargrove, turned him around, got served a penalty. And I think if I'm Steve Bartolotti, I'd be calling Hargrove to pit lane, knowing that Parent has now gone fast.
Absolutely, and Hargrove used that way wide, but got the car squared up and could pick the throttle up sooner and got a great run out of the turn, but Christensen able to sneak through. So watch this here. Who peels into pit lane? Who does not? None of them.
Out. No, I don't quite get it.
I mean,
when you got the information there on your screen.
Yep.
But you know that by coming down pit lane, you're going to lose about 40 seconds. So the key is you've got to be able to make up 40 seconds with the time remaining on the clock. So it's a tough call to make as the championship leader. And again, they're focused on Vilander. Vilander runs 5th. Hargrove right now, despite losing a position, is still 3rd. He's going to gain points on Vilander. And maybe that's the big factor for Steve Bartolotti in that FAF Motorsports group, is to not make that call and potentially hand a position to Vilander here today if he stays out.
And we're coming up on just 11 minutes left, so yeah, it's awfully late now to be doing that on that 40-second pit stop.
This is perfect for Perrin.
Yes.
He doesn't have skin in the championship game right now. He's just solely thinking about tomorrow. He's thinking about pole position, pole position. These guys are thinking big picture of a championship. He's just thinking about laying down a fast lap.
Look at the lap he just laid down, Perrin, a 1:23.5. So he is quickest now by a huge chunk, couple of seconds.
Well, I think by running this late in the game, you're really running a risk by pitting now, because you don't have enough time on the board to make up the time you're going to lose by coming on pit lane. So every lap that goes by, that makes that gamble even worse in terms of coming in.
So what we might see here when Baptista gets those tires where he wants them,
could be
K-Pax front row. Exactly. Boy, Mancinelli is just a joy to watch here, isn't he?
I think you're locking yourself in. Getting back to that strategy, Greg, I think you're locking yourself in by going this late.
Yep, I think
you got to stay out there.
Yep. And Parent, though, down a lap, that he is closing on the back of this trio of cars at a prodigious rate of speed. He has dropped that time now to a 22.5, found another second. He is just hooked up here in that yellow and very dark blue Opticoat Bentley from K-Pax Racing. And you've got to, when you're on slicks on a track like this, yes, there's that dry line. When you get off it at all, it is still slick. You have got to drive with exceptional precision.
Problem for Perrin is his teammate. Just went quicker. 22.4 for Baptista, fastest lap of the day. So it will be a K-Pax front row as we sit right now. They're the only guys who have made pit stops, and I don't think there's enough time on the board for anyone to make a pit stop and get back. So perfect playbook for the K-Pax team. Discussed it with them before they even started the race, and it just evolved how we expected. Wet start to the race, drying racetrack, put slicks on, lay down some fast times, and and get your grid spot for tomorrow.
Look at Brent there coming out of Moss. He just got the power down so much better than Hargrove with those slicks. Now he was able to just drive by.
Looking at the lap times on Morad, he just ran a 27.9 on his last lap, so he's almost 3 seconds slower than his fastest lap of the day, but he has an 11-second lead that he's built on Christensen. Now it's just going to be hang on.
And right now, that best lap he turned would still have him inside of row 2 at this stage, and everybody else is just going to go slower and slower and slower than that fast lap of Morad, except those two Bentleys. So you think, he'll definitely be okay on the second row.
And remember, Perrin and Baptiste are basically down a lap, so they're no threat to Morad for the victory, even though they're running several laps a second quicker. Perrin just takes the fastest lap back at 121.8.
Wow, that's huge chunks. And I thought I just saw chunks coming off of the back of Morad's car as he came down through 4.
You've got to be careful, Greg. You can literally explode a tire if you overheat it to the point. These high-speed corners here, it's a big gamble.
Minutes right now, and this is just management at this stage, isn't it, for the guys that haven't stopped?
He's got to play it so cool. He cannot afford to overstress those Pirelli P0s. They've had a year where we should be talking about Morad and Hargrove battling out for the championship, but they just had those few little niggly issues with the CRP machine, just a little bit of bad luck, and hasn't come their way. But here you can see there's Perrin now making a move easily around Christensen, so that puts him on the same lap as Christensen, and then they'll probably chase down Morad by the end of this race and get back on the lead lap, but no threat for the win.
21.8 that time as Perrin working traffic. Gives you an idea of the pace that he has right now. Morad still 11.8 seconds up on Christensen, who's now got about 3 seconds back to Mancinelli. Hargrove another 4 seconds back, and it'd be interesting to see watching Wielander's times. He's faded again in terms of what he's running, but amazingly to me, Morad and Christensen both ran 25s that time. That's pretty amazing that they're managing it enough.
Yeah, and again, they may have been managing a little bit more. Now they feel they're close enough to the checkered flag to keep pushing, but I'd be really cautious with that, because if you overheat, you can explode one of these tires. They're just not designed to run in these conditions at high speed for an extended period of time with the heat that it will generate.
So Morad just being very tentative here. And at this stage, if the tires are rooted, it doesn't do a lot to get off where it's down.
Have 4, maybe 5 more laps. Unfortunately, the way the time is running right now, he's probably going to have to do a 5th lap to see the 50 minutes out. So that's a long time on these tires, as worn as they are and as dry as this racetrack has been.
Brent. Was right. But Perrin has just set a wickedly quick second sector, and first driver to hit 160 through the speed traps. And we're just going to see a nice duel between those two Bentleys here. Who starts on what side of that front row?
Oh, look at this. Fuentes has caught Parker Chase here, so that Ferrari has really come alive. This is a battle for the M-Class lead.
It is, just that close. Fuentes, if he pulls it off, whoa!
That Ferrari is not happy in turn 1. That's twice we've seen Martin really struggling to keep the car underneath him. He's pushing hard. He knows how to score wins. That is for sure.
Yeah, the finished second to Harada at Long Beach, but has otherwise, I think, pretty much swept the table, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's been very, very strong, backing up at what was a tremendous GTA championship year in 2016. And we didn't see a lot of him last year, of course, but back in full force this year. And he's committed, Greg. He's committed to driving these cars quickly. He's committed to his fitness. I saw him last night in the hotel at about 9:30. He'd had a light dinner. He said, "I'm now going to hit the gym." I said, I'll see you there in the morning. I'm going to bed.
Yeah, he is perhaps the most effervescent personality in the paddock. Probably all the Italian espresso that he pounds constantly. It's good stuff.
It is. Needed it today. It's been a lazy old day for these guys. A lot of stop and go, particularly when you have a start that was supposed to have been a couple of hours ago, prior to when we finally saw green. They had to do a little reset.
Well, they literally were on the pre-grid, and then they postponed it Everybody went back to the paddock, then had to pre-grid and get ready to go again. Martinez eased off just a little bit, and I wonder if in this charge to catch Parker, he may have just rooted those rears a little bit, because that car is just dancing. Oh, look at that, Parent, a 119.0 as that K-Pax duel continues.
I think they were in the high 14s yesterday, as I recall from practice. So they're about 4 seconds or so outside of perfectly dry lap time here right now. This is the battle for the M-Class win here today. Chase versus Fuentes as Parent continues to charge down a lot of these other competitors. That is a battle for overall position. He gets around Harada, so he's 8th on the road right now.
Yeah, both sessions were 14.8s for the fast times yesterday in the dry. And the program manager for K-Pax is Darren Law and Pilar's Whitman.
So, Darren, you guys were the first to come in and pit, and now it looks like tomorrow you guys may be starting in first position. Is this something where the risk was worth the reward?
100%. You know, I mean, the race is not over, so it's not done, but this was planned the whole way through the race. You know, your time today sets the grid for tomorrow, so we knew we didn't have the pace in the wet, and once the track got dry enough for slicks, we went to slicks, and we're several seconds a lap faster. So it was the purpose the whole way through to try and get the front row, which is what I think we've locked out.
Thanks so much, Darren.
Well, the interesting thing is, once it hit 50%, and these guys went early, if within a few laps, a few minutes, others had decided to do it, these guys already had the tires warm and already had 3-4 seconds a lap on everybody, they could have been much farther up the order. So it was really win-win, wasn't it?
Yeah, and that can factor into the play for the other teams too, who are thinking of doing a similar thing. It's like, man, we're 4 laps behind these guys in generating that tire temp. If we go out now, there's no way we're going to catch up and get on that pace, because it just takes a long time to build that tire temp in these conditions, because again, you just can't load the tire like we talked about in the wet this morning in the qualifying session. If you can't load that slick tire, it just takes a long time to gradually get it in the sweet spot.
And just getting confirmation, white flag next time by. Murad was really close to having the opportunity to get the white this last time through, but just got there a little too soon. So he's got to nurse it around this lap and one more.
Look at this. The gap has been halved, essentially. It's just over 6 seconds right now. So Christensen has really got the hammer down. He just set personal best on wet tires in dry conditions, a 124.8. That is a stunner of a lap by Michael Christensen, and he can see the orange carrot in front of him.
Exactly, literally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, if anybody knows a Porsche, it's Christensen and what he can get away with in that car. A Porsche factory driver, a works driver as they call it, as he feeds it up through turn 8, 9. Here we go, white flag coming out, Cal.
Yeah, and this is going to be curious if Daniel's managed this to perfection, or whether those tires have literally gone off a cliff, and over this last lap, he's going to lose the gap, which now is away for Christensen across the stripe. Is down to under 6 seconds, 5.8, so Daniel should be able to hang on there. If that was in the 3-4 second range, I'd be worried, but he should have enough here.
Well, Daniel just turned to 25.2 to Christensen's 24.5. 6 seconds in hand, so it's just hang on to it. And he is doing exactly that, coming up on Harada. Who once again has faded just a little bit here. I think as those tires went off on that car, suddenly that's a different dynamic for Yuki.
Well, the tires have gone off, and the car was not good in the dry anyway. So
good point.
It's not an ideal combination.
The old double whammy. Christensen down through 4. I think that was just moisture that shot up in the air for a minute. I thought it may have been tire smoke. I think he just hit a little bit of a damp spot there. And here we go. Murad coming up on the back of Harada. And the lights are flashing, just letting Yuki know, look, I'm coming up. If you're quick enough, that's fine. I'll follow you across. But don't hold me up here. Into 8. One more time. Hope those Pirelli P0s hang on. They have been awesome, these tires so far, under these conditions. To be throwing the laps down, Cal, that these guys are throwing on absolutely rooted tires. This says something about the Pirellis, and it says something about Daniel Murad, Mercedes, winning at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. AMG GT3, Nick Short and the crew celebrating and it looked like they did manage this one to perfection.
They really did. It was a fascinating race just to see how this track evolved, what everyone did, whether the dominoes would fall. So it was perfect for the K-Pax team that were on the back foot here in the wet conditions. They played it to perfection, as did Daniel Morad. Christensen, a brilliant run here, just managing his tires and taking off. When you think what Hargrove was in front of him for most of the race, he's faded to fourth, but most importantly, he beat Vilander, who's the guy he's really clashing with in the championship at this point in time. But let's not forget, Morad's not that far behind. He's going to get the big points today.
Well, that's very good. Yeah, very, very true indeed. And Daniel here, this is home, and that door comes open in the celebrations as he drives by here. Parent finishes with an 18.9, Cal. So he will comfortably be on the inside of that front row with his young teammate Ricardo Baptista at a 1:19.7. Next up, I think that Morad might be back on row 3, though.
Yeah, he's going to be back a bit. Vilander looks like he's got a pretty nice lap put together there late in the going to 24.1. That was key for Tony on the very last lap, having enough grip and just really forcing the issue. He should line up on row 2, which is good news for him, ahead of Hargrove, who he's fighting in the championship. So it'll be a fascinating battle in a day that should be dry tomorrow.
Daniel down in Moss. There's always a great crowd down at Moss, and he's slowed down for a minute to just celebrate with the fans down there as he continues to make his way now down the Mario Andretti I should say up the Mario Andretti straightaway, and making his way down. There's Tony Vilander in the R. Ferrari, and that car, he actually, I think, managed things beautifully. He knew that what the car was going to be like in the wet, but that was a 24.1.
Yeah, and I think that looking at Vilander finishing 5th, that guy factored into Steve Bottolatti making that decision not to bet Hargrove. They had to cover him.
Yep.
They couldn't afford to run the risk of losing points in the championship to Vilander.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, in the sprint championship, they've got a healthy little margin, but in the overall, it's much, much tighter, and that's something that they're very focused on. Combines the sprint and Sprint X rounds, and in Sprint X, that Ferrari and that team have been superb.
Yeah, no, they're in it to win it, that's for sure. Great job, Daniel. That's an awesome day for him to grab the pole, beat his arch rival Hargrove, gain big championship points, another victory. First one of the year, second pole of the year, first one of the year. Had a couple of wins last year in Sprint X competition with Ryan Diallo, he co-drove with, but big day for this team.
Well, Daniel has won championships in GT Cup Canada competition, which is a great training ground. But it is that if you have greater aspirations. And I think last year was the breakout year for Daniel. Two things happened. One, winning the Rolex 24, and that's just immense in terms of achievement and the like as he gets out. And the second one was when he held off Jerome Bleekemolen at VIR. Yeah?
Maybe bigger.
Yeah. Well, that's what he said. He said in terms of reputation, that was bigger.
Look at him looking at his red tires, Greg. Saying thank you.
Well, and I really think that we have to give some serious shout-outs here to Pirelli and those P0s to take the pounding and be as fast as they were late. That's impressive stuff.
That's a testimony, because I thought those guys could have been in real trouble running those sort of lap times on a dry racetrack on a wet tire. And for those things structurally to stay together is amazing.
How about Christensen closing it up from that 15-second deficit in the last few laps, turning laps fast enough to get under 5 seconds at the line. But there is Toronto's Daniel Morad. The earplugs come out, and let's get down to Pilar.
Hey, I see
Daniel, it is nice to see you. You called it.
I said I'd make like some Ricky Bobby impersonations. Like, I don't know what to do with my hands.
Oh, knock it off. Knock it off. Knock it off. Now, congratulations. This is a huge win. Not only is it a home track for you, but it's also your first win.
Well, first win of the year for sure. I think it's it's been due for sure. We've had really strong cars, and in the past races, Long Beach, for instance, with an electrical failure, unfortunately. VIR, we had a technical issue after qualifying pole and setting a track record. Here, pole position in the wet and wet victory. It was really nice to deliver that win.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. We'll see you up here again tomorrow.
I hope so. And I just want to say thanks to Mercedes, AMG for all the support, DeVilbiss, CRP Racing. They just gave me an amazing car. To do this in front of my home fans with my brand new partner, AMG Oakville, on the car, it really means a lot.
Congratulations.
Let's not forget that Daniel and Michael, who shook hands just then, they co-drove together for that 24-hour win last year.
Yes, they did. That's exactly true. Yeah, good point. And that's been one of the fun ironies to sort of follow this whole season. Is those two guys fierce competitors, but when they teamed up, they won one of the Golden Ring events in endurance racing. Here's a look at our pro driver results, and Murad, Christensen, Mancinelli. I mean, what a joy to watch these guys race, especially the guys that didn't stop when those tires went off. Just the amazing control that they were able to deal with. Now, of course, it is time to get back down to Pilar with our AM winner. What a story. His first ever pole in GT AM competition. And that means his first win as well. Parker Chase with Pilar.
Yes, I am here with our winner, Parker Chase. Parker, it was an emotional day today with the delay and then the weather. Tell me how you were able to cope with it and end up with the win today.
Yeah, it was my first pole this year, and ever in World Challenge. We've missed out on a few by just a few hundredths, so it was nice to finally get our pole. You know, we qualified 4th overall, and then the delay just really, I was running to get started, see what we could do. We were starting up front. We had a few cars between us in the second place in class, so I just really wanted to get going and see what we could do. And then it's my first win as well, first one of the year, first one ever in World Challenge, so it feels good. And it's been coming a long time, and just haven't got it, but we finally have, and feels good.
Awesome. Well, congratulations. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
I tell you, that is a talented 17-year-old to be doing what he's doing at this stage, and doing it against the competition he's up against here. As you take a look at our AM results at this stage, I mean, Martin Fuentes, the way that guy runs, to have him behind you at the end, that's saying something.
It really is a great day for Parker Chase. That whole group, True Speed, led by Tyler Tadovic, Peter Barron there, Ryan Dial. Congrats to the whole group there. All of the boys will have fun tonight, but got to get ready for tomorrow. But I think everyone, they're going to be chased. All those top three are going to be chasing the guy at the bottom of the pile today is Baptista. He'll start on the front row there. K-Pax racing front row with the 2 Bentleys. And he's going to be tough to beat if it stays in dry conditions. The Bentley is very strong here.
Yeah, fast and furious. This is going to be a fun one tomorrow for sure. But, of course, we still have a little bit more coming at you today as well, as we do have a GTS race coming up. It's the 3rd round of the GTS Championship. On the schedule, as we've last heard it here, there is going to be a test or a practice session for one of the other classes running here, and then GTS competition will be coming out and putting on their show as well here at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. And the interesting thing is, I don't think there's any question, Cal, the GTS cars should all be starting on dry tires. And that one, with the size of that field, that should just be a battle royale. 23 cars should be taking the green in that.
Yeah, it's going to be a great race and a lot of strong competitors, a lot of experience at the front of the field. So I'm really looking forward to that one as we get ready for the last race of the day.
All right, folks, so that's going to wrap up our coverage here of this 4th round of the Pirelli World Challenge GT and GTA Championship at the Pirelli World Challenge Grand Prix at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Once again, all part of the Victoria Day Speed Fest weekend. It's a legendary event, and regardless of the weather, the fans here are just jammed in. They love it. They love their racing, and they're going to have plenty more of it here. As at 5:40, we will be back up with you for our GTS 3rd round of the GTS Sprint Championship for the 2018 Pirelli World Challenge Championship. So make sure you're with us then.